Welcome to the Law News Docket, the part of the show where we review law-related stories that are in the news. On today's docket, my co-host Daryl is going to discuss the recent lawsuits in the NFL regarding head injuries and concussions.
Thanks, Mike. Here's some background information about concussions in the NFL. Reports show an increasing number of retired NFL players who have suffered concussions and developed memory and cognitive issues, such as dementia, Alzheimer's, depression, and what they call chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE in the medical field. A concussion is a type of traumatic brain injury and can be caused by a blow to the body or a blow to the head. As a college football official, I'm very familiar with concussions, and I've also seen it in other sports such as soccer and even cheerleading. Concussion facts: most concussions occur without losing consciousness. Some examples of the symptoms that people exhibit when they have concussions include imbalance, headaches, confusion, memory loss, loss of consciousness, vision change, hearing change, mood change, fatigue, and malaise. Among the plaintiffs in the concussion-related lawsuit include many names that we're familiar with: Art Monk, Tony Dorsett, Jim McMahon, Jamal Anderson, and Ray Easterling. Most recently, in May of 2014, it was reported that Dan Marino, the former quarterback with the Miami Dolphins, had withdrawn his name from the concussion lawsuit that was filed this past May 28th. That lawsuit claims that the NFL knew for years of the link between concussions and long-term health issues. Here are some recent statistics related to concussions in the NFL. In 2012, 261 concussions were diagnosed during the preseason and regular season practices and games combined. In 2013, the number of diagnosed concussions dropped a bit to 228. Again, those were in preseason and regular season practices and games.
You know, Daryl, one of the things that I think a lot of people are concerned about here is not only how many have been diagnosed, but how many have gone undiagnosed, or how many subconcussive impacts these players have had on a repetitive and regular basis.
Well, and the other thing too, Mike, is how many weren't diagnosed? You know, how many players ignored it, were afraid to say anything about concussions, and more importantly, how many coaches ignored the signs and symptoms related to a concussion. That's the problem we have with regard to concussions these days, is that we have to change the culture regarding concussions.
What was it that started the whole concern about the concussions and the long-term brain sequelae?
Well, in 2002, Dr. Bennett Amalu, a forensic pathologist and co-founder of the Brain Injury Research Institute, identified the CTE, the brain injury, in the brain of former Pittsburgh Steeler Mike Webster. Unfortunately, Mr. Webster was 50 years old. He was a phenomenal professional college football player, but he committed suicide. So his death really started the trend to look at these type of brain injuries. And Dr. Amalu is the first to identify the CTE in American football players. You know, other players who have been diagnosed with CTE and committed suicide, again, a lot of these names are very, very familiar. Pittsburgh Steeler Terry Long, Andre Waters, former Chicago Bears defensive back Dave Duerson, former Atlanta Falcons safety Ray Easterling, former NFL linebacker Junior Seau. And Cincinnati has not escaped the problems regarding concussions. Unfortunately, Mr. Ryan Friel, and I believe everybody remembered Mr. Friel. Ryan was a great utility player for the Cincinnati Reds. Unfortunately, he committed suicide at the age of 36 in December of 2012. He was diagnosed with having CTE. So, you know, it is very prevalent these days, and people are making a concerted effort to really kind of change the culture with regard to identifying, you know, concussions and getting treatment and trying to get the prevention and treatment early so that you don't have these type of problems.
Yeah, losing these type of players is tragic, and I think people have expressed concerns about the CTE leading to other medical conditions such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, and a host of other problems.
In last August, in 2013, the NFL and the ex-players reached a deal in the class action lawsuit to pay $765 million to fund expenses, concussion-related medical compensation. Unfortunately, that lawsuit was not, it was declined, or it was by a judge in Philadelphia for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania because she didn't believe it was enough money. Apparently, the NFL on June 25th made an additional offer to fund the research, but it's going to be over a 65-year life of the settlement.
You know, as a college football referee who has much experience and much contact with this sport, what changes do you see occurring today?
You see it a lot at the high school level. You see it a lot at the college level. I think that's why there's a concerted effort. Unfortunately, I believe that a lot of these gentlemen that suffered these traumatic brain injuries, I'll guarantee you, I know that they probably had these injuries when they were in playing professional sports, but I can almost guarantee that they experienced an equal number of those concussions playing high school sports and college sports. That's why you see a concerted effort for the National Federation of High School Sports and ENCAA and the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta to address concussions so they can treat it, identify it, so that it doesn't rise to the level of the CTE.
What do you think is going to make this work?
I think you have to, again, change the culture. You have to change the culture of the players, the coaches, and the parents. People can't be afraid to say they got a concussion. The parents can't be afraid to let their child sit out, and coaches have to, step up and man up and say, you can't play because you have concussion-related syndrome.
Daryl, thank you very much. That was very informative. If you'd like to weigh in on today's news docket, go to our Facebook page called Cincinnati Law Works. Like us and follow us to get updates for future shows. Stay tuned. We've got some good information on workers' comp coming up.